Whether it's because of higher education or just because the time is right, sooner or later we must all fly the nest, and there's no shame in asking for help or advice from those who've earned their wings the hard way. As a wise person once said, an adventure is often not fun at the time. Now, to use myself as an example, I moved up to Leicester around 15 years ago with 3 friends. One of us already lived and worked in Leicester and agreed to come in with us. The others would soon be starting a degree at DMU, and I, having no luck in finding work in the small town in which I grew up, assumed that I'd have much better luck in a bigger city, and that made up our foursome. I'd also recently returned from living in a backpackers in Australia for 6 months, surrounded by all manner of characters from all over the world, and so, regardless of the stability it would offer me, I was eager to go back out on my own rather than moving back in under my mother's feet, having since glimpsed the wider world of independence and eager to return. Our situation was, after having only seen a few photos of our potential house on a property website, 3 of us would have to make the journey up from Hertfordshire to view it and then decide whether or not to sign the 12 months plus lease after having only this one visit. We admittedly had friends in Leicester which we could stay with overnight, but we also knew that the clock was ticking until term started and where more and more people would soon be locking down their own student-friendly properties. We arrived in good time, we looked around the place, we discussed it, and we soon agreed, and so we began our journey into becoming housemates. It was a fairly standard 4-bed end terrace with a single bathroom on the ground floor and a little concrete yard out the back. It was walking distance to the city centre through the park, and there was no evidence of it being situated in a bad neighbourhood. The power and gas were on pay-as-you-go meters that could easily be topped up from the shop on the corner, which also meant that there was no need to spend hours on the phone setting up a new account, and absolutely no danger of accruing huge amounts of debt by mistake. We also already knew one another, so there was only a minimal risk of any nasty surprises once we were to find that we were in one another's faces a lot more of the time. We each had bits and pieces to bring along with us, but this was only really for our own rooms, books, DVDs, clothing and the like, but nothing really for communal areas yet. The parents of one of our number had some old furniture stacked up in their garden shed, a sofa, an armchair and a TV unit, things like that, which we cleared out and arranged to have brought up in a van together with some of our bulkier personal items. Aside from the oven, which was built into the kitchen countertop, and 2 of the upstairs bedrooms having wardrobes built into alcoves within the brickwork, we'd each have to buy whatever else we needed, and also work out what we did need to make the new place our home. I remember the first night feeling a bit like a sleepover, or maybe more like indoor camping. We'd not sorted the TV licence yet, or the internet supplier, and I also remember wondering if we'd need to call someone to get the water supply turned on, or else there was going to be a bit of a situation in our one and only bathroom. That first night it was takeaway pizzas, watching a DVD on my mate's laptop in the living room, which was raised up on a pile of books, and sleeping bags set up in the rooms that we'd each agreed to take as our own. The first rule that we'd established was that people's bedrooms were sacrosanct and could only be entered with appropriate permission. We also agreed that there was to be no smoking in the house. Not for any moral reasons, as all 4 of us did actually smoke at the time, but rather you just smoked that much more when you could do it all the time without thinking about it. For those first few days, our routines involved roughing it with a few changes of clothes and the same basic toiletries we knew we'd need, like we were attending a music festival. But with the foundations in place, we could now build our new lives. Now, although this was the time before Facebook Marketplace and when paper CVs were still a thing, I will admit that there were advantages to my situation that won't be the case for everyone else. I was out looking for work, which also meant that I could take my time a little and look for the best furniture bargains until I really needed them, and it would be easiest for me. I'm aware that students with lectures to attend and reading to get done won't have this kind of a clear calendar. I also had a bit of money in savings which had been left to me, which meant that I wasn't quite as hand-to-mouth as some of the people in my situation, and plus I could rely on the bank of mum and dad if I ever got really stuck. And we also had friends that lived nearby, which meant that we were not completely adrift in a strange alien land. Plus, in a share house, although you'll never be far away from the sounds of other people moving around, the household bills won't come down quite so hard on only your shoulders, and there's also a feeling of safety in numbers when everything's still a bit new. On reflection, all these years later, I have fond memories of that place, as I dare say a lot of people will from their time spent living in old houses with what could be described as bags of character. I say that the location of that house was nice. It was only a short walk to Bede Park, basking in the sunshine with a book on a nice summer afternoon, and similarly nearby to Narborough Road with takeaways that were, in all probability, cheaper than actually buying any of the frozen equivalents. Albeit if you didn't ask too many questions about why that likely was. The house itself was a bit of a mess. One of the bedrooms was on the ground floor and it was prone to slugs finding their way inside and leaving slimy trails across the carpet. The boiler had to be tricked into making a sufficient supply of hot water, which also frequently broke down, and the landlord was clearly in no hurry to get it replaced or properly mended. The house also had that feel of a place that people had been resting in over and over and over again, but not in the sense of it having a warm glow that radiated through the walls as if the house could recall any number of happy Christmas mornings from those that lived within. The walls and ceilings were covered in that nasty wood chip paper that was designed to hide a million sins, but this still had been painted over again and again, in magnolia and off-white and all that dreary drab. The whole place was also prone to mould, as are most old buildings, and despite our best efforts, we never got our deposit back when we all moved out and went our separate ways. Although, I gather that's next to impossible to do. A friend of mine told me that she'd once not had hers returned because the landlord tried to tell her that the carpet had been worn away in the many years she'd lived there. Oh, and one night somebody pinched my mountain bike over the wall of the concrete yard. It admittedly wasn't locked up, but there was nothing for it to be locked to. But to just pour salt into that particular wound, they didn't even steal the waterproof cover. I mean, what does that say about the neighbourhood? The thieves didn't even steal all of my bike. So with that being the case, I will do my best to share my wisdom about starting life on your own in Leicester for as much comfort and as little money as possible to make your stay here easier so you can concentrate on both your studies and, well, other activities that you student types are so notorious for.